One thing to say about that is that a lot of Bitcoin transactions, at least in one of the papers I've read, it said that a lot of their transactions are not economically meaningful, but it's people just trying to move funds around to try and gain some privacy. So it might not be, that might not be entirely reliable to think that Monero is necessarily that far. It might be more like 20, 30, 40% of Bitcoin's economically meaningful transactions. So there is that to consider.
This week on Monero Talk is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys. And by StealthEX, an instant exchange where privacy is the top concern. Go to stealthex.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register, and with no limits, making StealthEX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. Monero Talk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you. And supporting us is easier than ever. By typing in monerotalk.crypto in your monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip. This week on Monero Talk. Douglas Tuman interviews Bawdyanarchist, an active participant in the Monero discourse on Twitter and Reddit, providing insights on the Monero price action. The two discuss what happened this past year in Monero and the crypto space and what they are looking forward to in 2023. They talk about how central exchanges conspired against Monero, the effects of Monerun, RandomX, and the recent hard fork on the ecosystem, the positive culture of the Monero community, why Bawdy foresees an inevitable increase in transaction count and price action, the IRS bounty, and much more. Monero Talk starts now.
All right, Bawdy, what's going on, man? Welcome to Monero Talk. I don't think I ever had you on as a Monero Talk guest, right?
No, but man, I really feel honored. You gave me the end of the year review spot. That's that's quite a big spot. Hopefully I wrote down and prepared enough all the things that happened in Monero.
Well earned, man. Since I thought you were impressive from the day I met you. When we met at Monerotopia, and learning who you were from Reddit. Always was impressed by you, but since working with you more, I'm ever more impressed, man. You have an amazing grasp of the crypto space and Monero in particular. Very
Thanks, brother. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So yeah, I wanted to bring you on because I thought we could talk about what happened this past year in 2022 with regards to Monero, obviously, and maybe the wider crypto space and the economy in general, whatever that leads. Particularly Monero, though, like what we achieved, and then maybe we could talk a little bit about what we might be looking forward to.
Yeah, sounds good. Any place you want to get started in particular?
No, I mean, obviously, so I guess big things that come to mind with just Monero is the price, transaction count, hash power. I guess we could talk about those basic metrics. You want to get into that?
Sure. Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of a price guy. That's really where I spent a lot of my time on Reddit, was in the XMR Trader sub. So I think this year we accomplished some really big stuff price-wise. We've been fighting an uphill battle against some pretty nefarious forces. It seems like CZ with Binance and quite a few of the other exchanges had conspired to fractionally reserve Monero. I think this goes all the way back to 2020 when I think it was a pre-planned delisting event with Bittrex. This is a bit of old news, but I think what they did is they wanted to create the narrative because they didn't get Monero for free. We kicked out ASICs. I don't think it's any accident that the moment that RandomX went live, it was just a few months after that we saw these price attacks on Monero. And so this year, with the people that organized the Monerun, I think we finally cleaned these exchanges out of any lingering Monero they might have had. And at this point, it just seems like price is just step. We're going up the stairs. And I'm not sure that they can stop it at this point, not without perhaps resorting to some very drastic measures. So I think
we've kind of won against those who are trying to print Monero.
I'd say that we've won the more important battles. D-Day has, we've gotten our beachhead now. We're making advancements. The war is definitely not over, but I think that the critical battles have been won. At this point, it's just a matter of time.
And what allowed us to win? Obviously, we had our those days where everybody pulled their Monero off the exchanges. But what really changed in the ecosystem that's now moving this in our favor?
I'm not sure that. I'm sure if I really thought about it, I could point out a few things that are like the big events that sort of brought us there. Like, for example, the money run. But I think it's just the steady improvements that we've seen repeatedly with Monero over the years. RandomX was a big deal. The recent hard fork that we did in August. Did I have that right? August? I know we delayed for a couple weeks there. But just like continual steady adoption, continual improvements, continually getting the message out there. And I think having a core crowd of people that are very, they're very adamant about the principles of digital freedom money. We don't have people like, sure, we have moon boys. I would like to be a moon boy. We didn't moon quite as much as I would like, but we have people that really do follow the principles of freedom and privacy. We have a community full of people that are fairly technically oriented. And over time, that just shows, it shines through all of the noise. We get a bunch of scams and other stuff that come and go, but Monero has just been so consistent that, in a lot of ways, I think it's kind of just a matter of time that we were going to reach this. This was always going to happen simply because of the nature of our community and contrasted against the rest of cryptocurrency.
Yeah, and as part of that, I think the culture of hold your own keys, right? I think that in Monero more than any other crypto, obviously in Bitcoin too, but I feel like in Monero people even take that more seriously. And then with just events taking place that have opened people's eyes to the issue with centralized exchanges, right? What we saw with FTX, people realizing that it's probably not smart to keep your keys on exchanges. And that I feel like kind of aligns very well with the Monero ethos. I think Monero does a great job at spreading that meme.
Yeah, it's funny. I've seen other currencies now trying to copy our whole fractional reserve, because at first we had some suspicions and then it started developing. Then when Binance in 2021 shut down withdrawals for 10 days and we saw this stuff come to light, we were like, okay, we had suspected this might be happening, but that was really kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. So we started understanding, we started researching with the mind to understand what was happening with this fractional reserve. And now I've seen more and more some of the Bitcoiners and other coiners talk about how, the exchanges are fractionally reserved and on our coins and X, Y, and Z. And Monero, we're just kind of like, yeah, we were pulling our keys off the exchange. We were talking about fractional reserve before it was cool, before the major price crashes. But let's see, what else do we have here? I wrote down a whole bunch of things. Oh, transaction counts. That's one thing I actually wanted to look up for this interview. I think we probably set more transaction counts than 2021, but we need to verify that. It seemed like the hard fork kind of put a dent in our transaction counts. We temporarily dipped back in August, and it seems like we've had some trouble recovering. But at the same time, we're in the middle of a bear market. Monero is finally making long periods of time, multiple days at a time, where we're ahead of both Bcash and Doge. So that's nice. Yeah.
So what are we at in terms of Bitcoin? We're at like 10%. Are we near the 10%?
Let me look this up just so I can make sure I've got it right. But yeah, I think we're about 10%. We seem to be hovering around 20,000. Wow, we took a big dip recently. Yeah, we've kind of been hovering between 15 and 30,000 for the past, looks like for the past 5-6 months now. But one thing,
go ahead.
One thing to say about that is that a lot of Bitcoin transactions, at least in one of the papers I've read, it said that a lot of their transactions are not economically meaningful, but it's people just trying to move funds around to try and gain some privacy. So it might not be, that might not be entirely reliable to think that Monero is necessarily that far. It might be more like 20, 30, 40% of Bitcoin's economically meaningful transactions. So there is that to consider.
Yeah, and especially, if you also just take out speculation, right? So a lot of the Bitcoin movements are people moving in on and off exchanges, right?
Yeah.
how many people are actually using Bitcoin for digital cash purposes to make transactions versus Monero? I would hypothesize that Monero has a higher percentage there than the 10%, right? I don't know. I mean,
Yeah,
I have
it
nothing.
would definitely be speculative, no doubt.
So where do you think Monero's going in terms of transaction count? Do you have any kind of thoughts there? Like where is the trend is obviously up, but like what do you think we might see this year in 2023?
Well, I've been expecting that we should get a big price pump at some point this year. Should break a bunch of the resistances coming up. I think if that happens, we should see transaction counts begin to increase, especially if Monero has significant price increases, and I think it will. I'm even very optimistic about Monero price, even in the face of cryptocurrency still having overall bigger problems. Again, because it just seems like the fundamental forces happening, the organic purchases, the organic usage of Monero continues to go up. Although the transaction counts they do seem to have leveled off as of the past maybe 6 to 12 months. But I don't think that's necessarily a huge problem. I think we all expect transaction counts to continue going up. But of course, it's very speculative, right? I can't say for sure what's going to happen in the future. We could have a bear market that lasts for some considerable period of time. If that does, we might not get brand new adoption. So like we might be able to pull some people from cryptocurrency in general to try and get them onto Monero. It's going to be harder to get people with new adoption unless they have like a pressing need for it in the face of a bear market. So overall, I think the fundamentals speak for themselves. I think we should do pretty good in transaction counts. But for now, we're a little bit flat. So hopefully we can start going back up again soon.
Yeah, I haven't. But Bitcoin is arguably flat too, I imagine, right now. Like you said, I mean, the market is down, right?
Bitcoin flattened out at like 250,000, 300,000, and it's just stayed there for years.
Oh, yeah. In fact,
but again, 75% of that, according to at least one research paper, is not economically meaningful.
Right. Do you think we'll see Monero's dynamic blocks in action? Do you think this could be the year where we start to see the dynamic blocks kick in?
Perhaps, maybe. I don't know. I guess I could offer some hopium, like absolutely, no doubt. Bye now.
Yeah, anybody listening in, just tweet this out. Let's get the word out a little bit. So we're going to continue to interview Bawdy, give the 2022 report review, and then we'll also talk about what we expect for the future. So just spread the word out. So we talked about transaction count, obviously price. You want to talk about price, or there's other things? What do you have on your list there?
I'll just go from the top. So let's cover exactly what happened with the hard fork. We went from 11 to 16 mixins. So that would be your real output and then 15 decoys. Changed the output selection algorithm just a little bit, thanks to the work of Rucknium. I don't know if he's not exactly a new guy. He's been around for a couple of years, but statistics guy. So it's great that we have some more people reviewing that. Let's see, the sync times are reduced by about 40% now for any transactions that happen after the fork. And I've noticed that on Cake Wallet, for example, my synchronization times are much faster. And then we got Bulletproof Plus, which improves, it's a 5% improvement on, I think it's the speed, transaction size, 5% improvement on transaction size, which is one thing that helped us to be able to increase from 11 to 16 ring members. Mm-hmm. So that was the quick and dirty on the hard fork that happened back in August.
And then the real increase in download or downloading of the blockchain came with the view tags, right? Because we could scan the history faster.
That's right. The view tags make the sync time faster.
Yeah, that was a major breakthrough. Anything else we want to talk about in terms of upgrades? I think that was it, right? Those are like the majors.
Yeah, this year I don't think we got any other major. Yeah, we didn't really have any other major upgrades, unless you consider Mine XMR shutting their doors after briefly gaining 50% of the hash power. That's not really an upgrade, but it encouraged a few more people to use peer-to-pool, P2
Yeah, we can
pool.
talk about that. P2 pool, right? That's something else that we've seen evolve quite a bit this year, right? Was it
Yeah,
launched this year, or was it around longer than that, right? Yeah.
it was last year.
Yeah. But this year I feel like we really saw some traction, right? I think even recently I saw people talking about a nice little bump up in percentage.
I believe we're at all-time highs in terms of P2 pool usage. I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't think it's integrated into the GUI wallet. I think we'll get significantly more adoption if and when that happens. Although I remember asking the question on Reddit, and it seemed like at least one or two of the devs, while they thought it was important, it wasn't to them like a very pressing issue. But yeah, we have seen P2 pool usage increase, not as much as we would like. I think it's still like the number 4, the number 5 pool in usage right now. But that was quite the thing for Mine XMR to shut down their pool. So when we talk about having a community that's just above and beyond or head and shoulders above the rest of the other communities we see in crypto, these guys are making plenty of money running this pool. And then when they started gaining more than 50% hash power, they tried to fix it by increasing their fees to discourage people from using them. And then ultimately they just shut their doors and said, no, we're not going to be a pool anymore. And it seems like they did this because they wanted to make sure that there wasn't a single pool with greater than 50% hash power. So it's unfortunate because it's really not an ideal kind of thing,
right?
To have just 2 pools that could be 50% or 1 pool. And you'll see a lot of the cryptocurrency ecosystem, and often a lot of haters will kind of latch onto that as like, oh, well, look, Monero is so centralized. Usually it's the maximalists saying that because, of course, Bitcoin is extraordinarily decentralized, right? But then you point out, well, hey, 3 of your pools, between 3 and 4 of your pools are enough to gain 50% of the hash power. Is it really that big a difference to gain control of 2 pools to gain control of 50% of the hash power versus 3 pools?
Right.
I don't think so. It's really, or it might be 4 pools.
And plus,
it's marginally different.
And plus, we have a solution that's gaining traction. I know they have their own kind of version, right? I think that they invented the concept in Bitcoin, right? This idea of P2 pool, but it hasn't really gained traction. I'm looking at the number. Yeah, Untraceable had tweeted today actually saying in July, P2 pool had only 3% of the total network hash rate. Today, it has 11%. So
wow, that's really good.
That's pretty significant. I think in Bitcoin, it's like a fraction of a percentage, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I'd have to take a look at it, but I don't think it's very high. And of course, they're dealing with ASICs. They're dealing with large corporations that operate at the permission of government in their preferred jurisdiction. So, why do they have that much of an incentive to use P2 pool?
Yeah. Did we see any other updates in Monero or anything to mention of significance with regard to mining? Anything you think? I mean, RandomX is chugging along. I
think our hash rate is kind of topped out lately. Although maybe I can check that real quick. Average hash per day. This always takes a second. But I think our hash rate is basically kind of topped out recently. It hasn't been. Yeah, actually, we've kind of been going down just a little bit. We're down maybe. What are these numbers here? We're down maybe like 50%. Not quite 50%. Maybe like 40% from like our all-time high RandomX hash power.
And so, I mean, that has a lot to do with just the price of Monero, right? So it's just not very profitable to mine Monero.
I've seen people do studies that it's correlated to Monero's price. I would imagine that if we had a higher price, we'd have significantly higher hash power. Which is, personally, I think that it would be better if we had like 10x, 100x the current hash power that we do. That's kind of another unfortunate byproduct of these price attacks that we've had, is that people don't have as big of an incentive to mine Monero. At the same time, I think overall, the network is fairly secure. So one thing people like to do is say, oh, well, Bitcoin has all of this hash power and Monero is a fraction of it. And of course, we always respond with, well, they're totally different algorithms. A CPU mining algorithm is not an ASIC. One hash in Monero is not equivalent to another hash. So really, it comes down to a question of which one costs more to attack, and then specifically, how much market cap are you guarding with a certain level of cost to attack the network. So I think it's a good idea to divide by market cap. And when you do that, Monero looks like, and just a cursory glance I did a few months ago, I really didn't dive deep into it, but a cursory glance, it did look like Monero had a very high ratio of how much it costs to attack the network versus the market cap. So, or a very, I should say, beneficial or good ratio in that regard, as compared to like Bitcoin or some other coins.
Yeah, it's just so disingenuous when they just call out the hash rate for Bitcoin as to say it's, you know, something that can't be overcome, and to try to then compare it to Monero when it's really, you know, apples and oranges. You really can't compare those two, right?
Yeah, we often, it seems like we have to deal with the, and it almost seems like they know they're doing it. Like they know it's not exactly, not just on that issue, but on a lot of issues. Seems like it's been an exercise in patience for me personally over the years to.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely know, right? And I think we've learned that it's just not always best to engage because they're not looking to. They already know what the pros and cons are, but they've decided to ignore the Monero pros because they, you know, they got their bags. It's as simple as that, is the way I look at it, you know. And I think you know, people in Monero are guilty of it as well, right? It's hard to be completely open-minded, but I think Monero, I mean, this is anecdotal, but I do feel like Monero does a better job at being self-skeptical, right? Let's talk about that. I feel like Monero historically has done well at that. Do you think we're still doing a good job at that, or is there you know, Monero maximalism growing among us? Are we still being open-minded, unbiased people, or are we starting to drink our own Kool-Aid a little too much?
I think that the people that have been around for a while still do tend to take a self-critical approach, and an adversarial mindset to try and make sure that we're not getting ahead of ourselves. We're not making statements that are, you know, exaggerating or going beyond. I think we do have new people coming into the ecosystem, and it is definitely something that happens in cryptocurrency where you've got your bags, you're going to save the world, your hodl will save the world, bro, stuff like that. And so I am seeing a little bit more of a tendency towards some of the emotional, you know, all of that kind of thing. But I think overall we still do a pretty good job. I try and do my part whenever I see maybe over exuberant Monero maximalish kind of people to chime in and say, well, you know, let's be careful. Let's not go too far. I think we have a very natural kind of resistance against that, or a natural immunity towards that, having seen it happen so much from the Bitcoin side. And many of us having come from Bitcoin maximalism or something like that. So I think we've got a good chance of not being like that over the years.
Do you think, how do you think Monero should think about its culture moving forward? So are we doing the right thing, or you think there's little things we could do to change it? You know, kind of our self-branding and how we see ourselves, what we're focused on. I think, you know, this idea of being focused on use Monero, right? Don't hold Monero. I'm sure you can hold Monero. There's no reason why theoretically it can't be an amazing investment, but you should really be looking at it first as this tool for transacting on the internet.
I'm okay with looking at it both ways. I think it was a really good way to start out. It was a good way to set the tone of a community that isn't acting like all the rest of the communities that are, you know, kind of being silly. At the same time, like, speculation is a use case. Like, let's be real. And a way to store value is a use case. I personally hodl plenty of Monero myself. So I would kind of be a hypocrite if I said only, you know, don't focus on hodling Monero, focus on using it. And I do try to use it anywhere that I can. But I'm okay if we venture a little bit into the price forays.
Yeah, no, same here. I do think it's good to focus on the transactional nature, just because it's easier to talk across communities when you talk in those terms as well, right? So
what do you mean by cross communities?
Well, across to talk to the Bitcoin community, right? So if you talk about Monero more as a tool for transacting, they're more open to that conversation than it's a store of value conversation.
Yeah, I think that's actually a clever backdoor into the Bitcoin community, because they'll be like, well, we're digital gold, and all shitcoins die to Bitcoin over long periods of time. They're like, oh yeah, that's okay. You guys can be the digital gold, but just use this transactional, to protect your privacy. No big deal. Little do they realize that
out loud. We're supposed to
what's
keep
that?
Should we not be having this conversation out loud? That's like the secret Monero plan. I mean,
That's a good point.
But it's true. I mean, and you see the Bitcoin community, a large sector of it being very open to talking about Monero as useful for purely transactional purposes, which in my mind, it drives me a little crazy, because I'm like, well, how can you only see, it doesn't make sense, right? If you think it's a utility for transacting, it's doing a large part of what crypto was meant to do. And it's obviously doing it better than most. If you're saying you should use it for those purposes, then why would you not also think it's inevitably going to go up in value, right? You literally can't have one without the other. But hey, if it works.
Yeah, we're fighting narratives, and narratives are the kind of thing that get entrenched emotionally and tribally, and you want to save the world and you want to get rich while doing it. I get it. I understand it. Me too.
I mean, this is a tough question. What do you see as being some of the potential big narratives in 2023 in crypto?
That's a good one. I haven't really thought about that too much. Probably the first one, bear market is over, right? We bottomed. Things are good to go. You'll probably see, the self-custody narrative is really starting to take shape, maybe we should say reemerge. What else might we see in cryptocurrency or Monero, or both, I guess?
I guess let's start with crypto, or if you have thoughts on either. I mean, it's a tough question. Obviously, I'm asking you to predict the future here, but any big, large themes that come to mind?
Oh, nothing off the top of my head. I guess probably stuff that centers around fraud. How to avoid the fraud, who to trust, who not to trust. There's gonna have to be some kind of like saving narratives, like things were bad, price was bad, but you'll probably see a lot of the, if you don't love me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. With the worst part being at the bottom wicks, and the other side of that equation. Probably see a lot of that. You'll probably see a lot of Lightning Network, a lot of pushes for the Lightning Network. Maybe there'll be some kind of resurgence about how private Lightning is. I had a debate today with someone on Twitter about, and they actually accept Monero. So they're not unfriendly towards Monero, but they were kind of pushing that Lightning Network is private. And from everything I can see, it's really not. Now, it might be more private in an interpersonal sense, but I don't think it's private from chain analysis. It doesn't look that way. So we might see some of that reemerge. If Binance and Tether survive, then probably we'll see like a big push, like almost bot pushed narratives on Twitter, in terms of like, oh, well, you're just a hater, and they survived, and clearly that they didn't die, so they're not a scam. Tether's not a scam, and like Cheesy is amazing, right? So probably we'll see some narratives evolve in that regard. Personally, I'm not convinced one way or another if Binance survives or if Tether collapses or not. They could be a metastable fraud at this point. Like, that's very possible.
Do you think there'll be some backlash from the Bitcoin community? Like we were just talking about how, the just use Monero is a good meme, right? It kind of gets your foot in the door in the Bitcoin community. But do you think with the, this effort behind making the Lightning Network a real tool for transacting privately as well, do you think we're going to start to see a backlash from that community kind of against Monero? Like why is anybody using Monero? It's obviously we always hear hints of it. It's a shit coin. Why are you using it? But like now more than ever, as they try to push Lightning, because right,
it could be.
It's kind of a direct competitor with the Lightning Network.
I don't see much. Like that might be the idea in a lot of people's heads, that that there is this competition, but I don't see much overlap in the particular places that are sort of famously known where Lightning and or Monero are used. Like, for example, the darknets, nobody uses Lightning in the darknet markets. I'm sure you could find me like some darknets that have a Lightning option. There probably exists, but by and large, people are using Monero. It's just like everybody knows and is really starting to understand that if you want to protect your own balls, like you're going to have to use Monero. Like you just don't want to take the chance on using Bitcoin or Lightning or anything when you're in a very adversarial environment. We saw that with the Canadian trucker protest this year. And regardless of what anyone thinks about, the righteousness or the evil of whatever cause they were doing, it was very clear that the donation addresses were doxed, that those addresses went to government agencies, and that it was hard for people to cash out the cryptocurrency that they received, except for Monero. That was easy for them to get. Another story I saw when I was looking at this year's history, Ukraine apparently accepted Monero as well. They added Monero to their list of coins that they'll accept. So that was pretty cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a big moment. The trucker rally was a big moment. Do you think we'll see any catalysts like that? I mean, obviously, once again, hard to predict, but given where things are headed, could there be, one of these catalysts that take place this year in terms of people realizing the need for censorship-resistant money?
Well, we see new catalysts every single year, so it'd be hard for me to imagine that this year wouldn't be the same. For the past 2, 3, 4 years, we just keep saying over and over and over and over again all of the reasons why you should be using Monero. And these hard lessons are finally being learned. It looks like people are finally understanding that, yeah, when you're in an environment that might be adversarial, you really just want to go with Monero. And I think that since there is no more fractional reserve ratios to go deeper into, I don't know if that's a great way to phrase that, but since the exchanges are basically out of Monero, I don't think they're going to be able to stop the price increases as this happens. So it could actually be a year where we see major catalysts. And people will say, oh my God, it might just be like a regular catalyst. But because they can't suppress the price anymore, or they have very limited mechanisms to suppress the price, it might be one of these things where we see some of these catalysts, the same kind that we've seen the past few years, but that it could have major price impacts. Or maybe it could be something as simple as the Gox coin. I know I won't shut up about the Gox coin, but it's very possible that we could see this release of the Gox coin, and it only takes 0.5%, 1% of that Bitcoin getting moved into Monero for us to see some pretty big price explosions. Yeah, I think yes.
When are we supposed to see the Gox coin? Like, what's the potential?
Nobody knows. It was supposed to be like, was it Carpellis said at the beginning of this year, he said that it would be like maybe at the beginning of fall. And then that came and went and didn't happen. They are proceeding. They're finally, like, the Gox trustee was silent for like 6 to 9 months this year, didn't say anything. And finally, they started collecting the information that they need to pay people out. And the way that's going to happen is the Gox trustee is going to transfer all the Bitcoin that are going to get paid out to the exchanges that people have signed up for. So predominantly that appears to be Kraken, just from a sampling of what I've seen on Reddit and different places. So I think most of that's going to go to Kraken. But you don't want to be the Gox trustee and then have to set up all of these systems to distribute Bitcoin. No, you just send that to an exchange that knows how to do that. It should be 2023. This should happen 2023. It's the early lump sum payout is what they call it. There will be another payout like 3, 4, 5 years, maybe. We're not quite sure. There's pending court cases. What's that?
What's like the estimated value of what this payout's going to be?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen any estimates. The total amount of Bitcoin that they have is 141,000 and also BCH. Now, I don't know how much of that will go to the early lump sum payment. I'm just going to take a wild ass guess and say half of that. So maybe 70,000.
Wow. That's very significant. And you're saying most of that it's going to be distributed through Kraken, or you're saying a lot of people will go to Kraken? What's the Kraken tie-in here?
Oh, okay. So people have to register on an exchange, and they've got to provide their information to the Gox trustee about which exchange do they want to receive their Bitcoin. You can choose to receive it all in fiat if you want, but for the people that want to receive back their Bitcoin, they are only going to get distributed through an exchange. this is a protection mechanism so that the Gox trustee doesn't have to create a bunch of systems to distribute Bitcoin to, I don't know, thousands of different people. And so online, it appears that most headlines, most comments I'm seeing, it looks like people are opting to go with Kraken as their exchange custodian.
Right, and Monero is listed on Kraken, so you might see some people that are just coming into their newfound Bitcoin or their refound Bitcoin and decide, maybe putting some of that into Monero.
Yeah. It's funny, we're with the whole FTX saga, we're going to see this Gox thing play out again over the next like 5 to 10 years. Yeah, probably like a copy paste.
That's crazy. Are there any other big events like that on the horizon? Like any U.S. auctions taking place? I don't know if I've really been following that too closely. Like, are there coins to be auctioned off?
Yeah, the two main ones that stand out in my mind are the Bitfinex coin that was found. Those that couple that I don't know. We're not entirely sure how they got pwned, but they pwned themselves somehow. So that was like, I don't know, I want to say 100,000, 110, 20,000. And then there was some additional Silk Road coins. I think it was 47,000, maybe 50,000 coins that were seized. This guy, oh my God, he's the perfect example. For the most part, it seems like he knew what he was doing. He understood security. He'd been in the game for quite a while. I'm going to get this wrong probably. He pwned his privacy with a change address. He had a bunch of Bitcoin that he had from the Silk Road. He hacked it. He didn't really hack it. It's just he saw that there was this bug where like if he deposited and then tried to withdraw within like 5 seconds, it would let him withdraw 5 times as much as he deposited. So he did this a bunch of times and got like almost 50,000 Bitcoin. And so this hack had gone not undiscovered, but no one knew who he was until just a few months ago, or maybe it was 6 months ago. Anyways, the thing that got him pwned, he had a cluster of addresses that were associated to his name on an exchange. And then he had all the Bitcoin that he lifted off of Silk Road. On some change address where he was transferring some coin, he accidentally used a change address that was associated with his real identity that he had on a crypto exchange. And that's how he got busted. We're talking about a guy that got away with it for like 6 or 8 years, something like that. And just one screw up 8 years after the fact, and he's over. He's done. Like, could there be a better advertisement for why you should use Monero?
Well, yeah. What are Bitcoiners? How do they even respond to that? It's just like, what? Right? What are they saying? Like he just didn't do things the right way? Is that basically? Yeah. He screwed up.
Like if that guy can't do it, probably 99% of y'all others can't do it either.
Do you know his name?
I don't remember his name now.
We should try to do some kind of show on that. I forgot about that. That was big.
Oh, you could even get him on the show. That would be awesome. I don't know if he can, if he's in jail or not right now.
You're not. Yeah. Well, this is the guy that you're saying that hacked Silk Road.
Yeah, at least one of them.
Yeah.
I think there was a few.
Do you love coffee and Monero as much as we do? Consider making gratuitous.org your daily cup. Pay with Monero for premium fresh beans, and if you like what you taste, send a digital cash tip directly to the Guatemalan farmers that made it possible. Proceeds help us grow this channel, Gratuitous, and Monero.
Yeah. What are some other big themes that you see coming up? How about like regulation, right? That could be something.
Oh yeah. Well, as long as you have me on, I would love to give my rant on Tornado Cash, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the Tornado Cash incident to me is one of these things where I believe they have the legal pretext. Now, like governments typically do, they'll take that pretext and they'll take it as far as they can. Nevertheless, I think this is something that we should fight against, because it's like you want to fight them far away from your own home turf, right? We don't want to have to fight for Monero's right to exist in the courts here and across the world. It's better if we're fighting for Tornado Cash and say, hey, these guys are fine, legally speaking, y'all have crossed the line, and we should fight that battle like to the nth degree. We really should. because if we can establish the legitimacy of Tornado Cash and keep them out of hot water, then Monero, I think, is beyond question legal. Nevertheless, the problem with Tornado Cash is that it's fundamentally speaking, technologically speaking, what you're doing with Tornado Cash is something very different than what you're doing with Monero. In Tornado Cash, you have these transparent addresses that are publicly known to be from criminals, and they are inputting funds into a common pool, into a common account that you are also inputting your funds to. You are knowingly mixing your funds with people that are known criminals. So it's like you're allowed to have privacy, but you're not allowed to aid and abet criminals to gain their privacy while you're getting your own. And so in the process of mixing your funds, actively participating in this, you've now tainted your coin and you have no plausible deniability. With Monero, you have a very different situation. You're never mixing your funds. You can provably demonstrate that your funds were always segregated from other people. You're only using mix-in decoys with your transactions. And furthermore, all of the decoys that you're using, right, all of the outputs on the blockchain that you're using as decoys to your own transaction, those are truly neutral. No one really knows with any certainty which outputs belong to who and whether that's with nefarious activity or not. So not only are you not mixing your funds, but the decoys you use are neutral and aren't a thing where you're actively participating in the mixing of funds. I think in a legal sense, this separates Monero significantly. I think it makes Monero much stronger and resilient against legal attack. But at the same time, I think we just saw a few weeks ago where Senator Warren and one or two of her friends decided to introduce that bill where they specifically call out privacy coins. And it looks like they are trying to label nodes, people that run nodes and mining pools as money transmitters, which, that would totally destroy the entire ecosystem. Now, I don't think they're going to win. I think it's an absurd claim for them to make, but it could be one of these things where like they're pushing as hard as they can to get this, and after negotiation, they still got some extra legislation passed that might be adversarial or negative to the aims of Monero and cryptocurrency in general. I think that it's very likely that the FTX event, I shouldn't say likely, I should say we should suspect that it's possible that this FTX event was maybe some kind of pre-planned thing. Who knows exactly what it was? At a minimum, they are going to leverage this to try and pass as much new regulation as they possibly can, even though they already have the laws that they need to go after fraud and crime. Like, they don't need any new regulation, but they're probably going to use it to grandstand. So I think you're right. That will be a theme we'll see this year, much more than we saw in the past years. And I think that these legal things that are happening could actually have teeth, much more than we've seen in the past. Seeing crypto people kind of, whenever some new legislation comes out, no one reads it. They just read the headline, whatever CoinDesk said or whatever, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, it's all falling. They're trying to kill crypto," and it's like, well, no, they're just kind of doing little things that's pretty, like, that's not really that big a deal. But this one that Senator Warren tried to do is a really big deal. It's, in my opinion, it's criminal in nature what they're doing. So.
It's why I ran for Congress, man, in 2020. And if I would have kept running, I would have been getting inaugurated in like a week. The guy who ran in that race this year in that same seat as a Republican flipped the seat for the first time kind of ever. But yeah, no, I think we're going to see some things go down this year in terms of rate. Could it potentially, I wonder, work out to Monero's benefit a little bit if they just kind of ramp up on regulating, forcing basically exchanges and anybody who provides tools to provide any data they have on the use of the crypto, right? So, and with Bitcoin, you can do that, but with Monero, you can't. So effectively, they'll implement whatever, even if they implement, try to implement KYC AML on nodes or mining farms. Obviously, it would be harder to do that with Monero, and it just kind of be like, well, hands up, and it may take place, but it may affect Bitcoin, right? It would affect Bitcoin deeply because it would, it's a traceable ledger that combined with these regulations would effectively nullify it, and then you would just have Monero there standing there unaffected. And the way it would be stopped then is at that point if they literally banned privacy coins, right? quote unquote
Yeah,
private coins. That would really be the
that's
only way they'd. And so then I don't know, like maybe we get lucky. Maybe they do. I mean, I guess I don't want to be rooting for regulation, obviously, but in terms of Monero, maybe it works out where they do ratchet it up in terms of regulation, but they never go so far as banning privacy coins. I don't know. That's just. Do you think that it could possibly shake out that way, or am I just daydreaming for Monero?
no. I think you're onto something there. I think that the Monero's fundamentals and the way it's built, technically speaking, is much more resilient to these legal attacks than many other coins. Like you said, if we are, as nodes, required to report on the stuff we're seeing, there's not much to report. Whereas, like you said, these other coins, they've got a lot of information that they might be required to share. It's a lot easier to target them because it's known where the miners are. I think we would basically need to see, like you said, a direct attack on Monero, just like banning it altogether. So it's going to be hard for them to like use these side channels to come and attack Monero and suppress or stop it. They're going to have to come full head on. And that it seems like they haven't wanted to do that. That has been, in fact, the last thing they've wanted to do. They've tried to be silent. They've tried not to highlight attention onto Monero. So yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot to be said for that. If they do end up attacking Monero, like straight on full frontal attack, we have very high chances, I think, in the legal system to repel those attacks, at least in most countries. I know that a lot of people, they kind of have this mentality like, oh, the government is omnipotent, they can do whatever they want, and they'll just come and they'll screw everything up and they'll put you in chains and enslave you and yada yada, which isn't how I see things. Yes, governments are bad. Yes, a lot of the people in government are nefarious people, but there are still rules that they have to go by. And while they can bend and break those rules very often, they still have to deal with there are honest people in the system. They exist. And while they might be a little bit brainwashed, I mean, I'm an anarchist, so, I just don't believe in the authority of these people, but a lot of them do want to try to do the right thing. And a lot of those people in the system do uphold rights from time to time.
100%, man. There are real patriots in America. Whether you think that's a pejorative word or a positive, there are people that believe in these ideals. A lot of people take advantage, and they get into politics for reasons of power. But you have these diehards. Like, look at me. Like, if I would have got into that seat, right, I would have been there making these arguments. And I do believe there is a subsection, a subgroup of our populace that would hold it down. I'd like to believe that. But we saw Tornado Cash, right? We saw it happen. They sanctioned it, right? So that's why, because it's not that big a leap. I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, technically, there's a lot of arguments to be made as to why it would be a much larger encroachment on our rights if they were to ban Monero, but they're getting closer. But I do agree with you. I don't think it would happen. I do think, whatever, Supreme Court, something would step in legally that where the arguments would be made, and Monero it wouldn't be found to constitutionally legal to ban it. I mean, we saw it with PGP. I just don't see how there'd be a difference unless things that really do get crazy. Maybe we do see some kind of false flag, some kind of event that takes place that then gives them the political will to basically take away people's rights, where they're okay with it.
It's possible. I mean, after watching everything that they did with the whole medical tyranny, I suppose anything's possible. But that kind of backfired in a lot of ways. A lot of people that didn't realize the nature of, they just government's kind of incompetent and dumb or whatever. But I think with the whole medical tyranny, that people started saying, oh, my government, whoever's government, certainly appears to be nefarious in ways that are crucially important. And I've seen a lot of people, like even my own family, that, people love the idea of freedom. People like live and let live is a very popular mentality for the most part. And I saw a lot of people, including my own family, that started realizing just what the government might be up to. And it changed a lot of hearts and minds, I think, in the favor of freedom. And it really helped expose things. I think it's going to be very hard for them to do that kind of thing in the future, personally speaking. I actually have more hope for liberty and freedom after the past few years. It made me more optimistic than I was, say, 3 years ago.
That's all right. You got me thinking positive thoughts there. I mean, I look at that sometimes. It terrifies me because I saw how many sheep there were that just go along with it. But you're right. There was a subset that stepped up, right? That got together, pointed it out collectively, and held their ground. Do you think we would see the crypto community at large get behind Monero if it was, a finger was pointed at it and said, we're just banning Monero? Like, would the BTC maxis have a change of heart, or would they be like, this is why we never liked it in the first place? It wasn't conducive to government regulations. I don't know how, what's going to happen? What would potentially happen there? Any predictions?
In a lot of ways, I see the crypto community is already warming to the idea of Monero. Just the difference between today from 2 years ago, like, for example, on Reddit cryptocurrency, like, it used to be like, we don't talk about Monero, oh, it's just going to get banned, and a bunch of negative stuff. And of course, we still had positive people in there, but maybe it was like 1/3 positive to 2/3 negative. Now it's like 4/5 positive. Most people in that forum that I see talking about Monero, everyone is like fairly positive on it. It's probably true that we have a lot more allies in the maximalist community than maybe we might think. I feel like that whole thing is just going to take time. It just takes time, people to reorganize their thoughts and kind of be like, oh, okay, maybe I was a bit silly, maybe I took it too far. Like, time helps in that regard. There'll probably always be some diehards, and they'll never give it up, and they'll just like cling to it. But honestly, I do think if we saw big attacks against Monero, we probably would see a significant number of people rise up and be like, yeah, that's bullshit. Let's oppose this.
Yeah, I think like the coin centers of the space would step up for sure. I would, just like they did with Tornado Cash.
I think it will be a harder road to follow, but it would ultimately be a more successful road. So, for example, if the government came after Monero and just like a head-on assault, and we had to go through the court system, and we had to establish, kind of like PGP, that our right to exist as a fundamental human right to use a communications network, an encrypted communications network, that would be a harder battle to fight. It might cause price problems for us, and we might have a lot of people that suffer negative consequences in the interim until we finally win that legal battle. Ultimately, winning that legal battle puts us beyond question, and I think that in a very long-term sense, could even be a very good thing.
Yeah, we had Zimmerman at the last Monerotopia. Might try to get him to attend in person for this one. What do you think?
That'd be cool.
That'd be cool, right?
I'd have to like restrain myself from like bugging him and asking him, 1,000 questions.
I think we might be able to pull it off. You know what I didn't realize? Hal Finney was instrumental in creating that technology as well.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I read about that yesterday. I was surprised to learn that, and I don't think I ever spoke about that with Zimmerman. I'd like to, get his take on his interactions with Hal Finney.
Do you remember what aspects that was? Like, what was he involved with specifically?
I'm not sure. They just mentioned that he was working essentially with Zimmerman, and I think he was the one like implementing the code.
That's pretty cool,
right?
So Zimmerman was doing like the cryptography, the math, and Hal Finney was doing the code implementation.
Yeah, for PGP.
Nice.
I didn't realize he was that involved in that. Yeah. Any other thoughts on regulation, or what else we got? Any other big themes, big things that you could see happening in 2023?
With any luck, fingers crossed, maybe we get the GUI, a production release GUI implementation for atomic swaps. Maybe we get Seraphis, completed and finished, right? Maybe we get some of these dexes and these alternatives popping up. That's really like, to me, that's one of the last major pieces that we need for virality. If we can get those going, I think that we have if we get better on-ramps and much less friction to get into and out of Monero, I think that helps us tremendously.
You think what is it? What do they call it? Sarai, right? Sarai or Sarai? Do you think?
Right. I probably am mispronouncing it.
Yeah, you think that's the one to really keep an eye on this year? You think that will be our decentralized exchange solution?
I don't know. I was kind of hoping we'd have one already. My personal prediction was like that we would get like the end of summer, but I don't know. I mean, we've got quite a few of them out there. There's Newt's XMR and ETH atomic swaps, which I actually think is more important than maybe, I don't know, and it's hard to say, right? But I think that XMR ETH atomic swaps are more important than XMR BTC atomic swaps because the ETH ecosystem has so much stuff people like to play in there. You get all of the stable coins when people, like for example, when Tether or whoever starts printing stable coins, that is part of the mechanism of leverage to help pump the markets. And so the Moon Boy in me wants closer access to those stable coins. Because when people get mad gains on whatever their tokens are, their ETH tokens, ultimately people like to roll those gains into other projects. And so if hypothetically we saw another bull run, we saw another big move with printing of stable coins, if you could get from Ethereum into Monero with an atomic swap, that would, especially on like Uniswap or some kind of ETH DEX, that would be wonderful because then you could see people rolling those, rolling their gains and rolling those stable coins directly into Monero market cap. And again, it's like, I feel like Monero is right at this point where it's like small inputs of organic buying or even small amounts of hype can really send our price significantly higher.
Yeah, for sure. I gotta reach out to her, try to get her to come to Monerotopia this year too. You're reminding me as we're talking.
I think she's pretty close. From the last I saw, it looked like she was getting very close to being. I mean, there's a lot of like peripheral stuff to develop there, but the central atomic swap with the GUI functionality appears to be getting pretty close.
So what do we got? ETH to XMR atomic swaps. We got BTC to Monero atomic swaps, which kind of I feel like has stalled, like never really gained traction as being a useful tool, or hasn't yet, right?
Yeah, I mean, the command line version exists and it's usable, but I don't think there's much liquidity there. And I personally wouldn't use it because I know I'd screw it up. I need the dumb user protections for sure.
And then we have Havino being worked on, hasn't launched yet. There were some hiccups there in development, and now I think Cake, like Vic, took that over, right, and is funding the development of that.
I think so. I think there was like a change of leadership because they tried to add Zcash. I think that was back in April. Maybe it was, I don't remember when, but yeah, sometime mid-year they tried to add Zcash as like a first-class citizen with Monero, and the community was like, "What the hell? Like, we all funded this."
Right.
And we understand that you're going to be a DEX for multiple different coins, but should Zcash really be on like your top, I think it was like top 4, top 5 list. And so they walked that back, which was good. And then it seems like, I think it's Eric Sion was the primary guy.
You're not allowed to say his name on the show. That's the one. We don't ban anything on Monero Talk except
he who shall not be named.
I've invited him on the show multiple times, despite how much the guy hates me and how much he's pissed me off.
That's great, man. That's such a difference in values. You demonstrate a difference in values because you're like, even though I don't like you and I disagree with you, I want you to come talk to me out in the open. I would like to have this conversation. Like that's great. That's what we should be doing.
I mean, me personally, he makes me so curious. Like I don't understand. What makes him tick? Why is he such an angry? Maybe I'm sure we can find common ground. I always think there's common ground to be found. Especially among people that are working on Monero, right? Like, how can you not see the bigger picture, right? If we're both here for the purposes of developing this technology to make it into digital cash, how hard could it be to find common ground?
Yeah. Well, it's crazy. We see a lot of developers, maybe not a lot, but we see a lot of people. Like I personally have significantly divergent political opinions about many other things, and I'm actually really glad they're in Monero. Because I don't want us to become a uniculture. I don't want us to be like the remade Republican Party or the remade Libertarian Party or whatever. I'm kind of glad these guys that have difference of opinion
Right.
are here in Monero.
It's like cash, right? It's like the beauty of the dollar bill. Like you don't know who else has touched that dollar bill. It's probably every different type of person, right? And if Monero is truly going to be a global utility for those purposes, then it needs to be open and useful to all.
Yeah.
So Havino, Sarai we mentioned, which is being worked on. I have no idea if it's could be implemented or launched this year. I forget what our last combo.
Thorchain pieced out. I guess Monero's too real for them.
We had Thorchain. I mean, that's pretty much dead on the vine for Monero right now, right?
So it seems like. What's funny is they were the most vocal of everyone. Like, your atomic swaps are stupid and your DEX is gonna suck, but Thorchain's where it's at. And then they were like, oh no, it's too private for us. Okay, guys.
So lame how they couldn't figure that one out.
I know.
What's the guy over there that we might have him over at Monerotopia as well? Getting his name, I could pull it up. What were some of the other potential decentralized exchange solutions for Monero? I think we kind of hit on them all, right? I mean,
I think that was most of them, yeah. I'm sorry, anyone out there, if we missed your decentralized Monero exchange solution. I didn't do my homework good enough.
Had Particle on. I don't know if you watched that. They launched their decentralized exchange.
That's cool.
Monero's integrated into it. It's pretty interesting.
Nice.
Yeah, man. Anything else? So I think we covered that topic there. What else do you want to bring up in terms of things we should point out? Stats for 2022 and things to look forward to 2023. Anything else?
Monero became number 1 on coin cards, or very close to it.
Oh shit! Okay, I know. Like in the U.S., right? In the U.S. it's number 1.
We started the year number 2, 3, 4. It depends like on whether it's US or Canada or worldwide. But we started down 2, 3, 4, and now we're like number 1 and number 2 across the board. If trends continue, Monero will be number 1 on coin cards next year. So that's pretty cool. Again, more evidence of organic adoption, organic usage.
Right. If you have to make a digital cash transaction, more people are choosing Monero. Yeah, man. Anything else?
Molvod added Monero earlier this year.
Okay, that's big.
Molvod IP VPN.
Yep.
And I just saw it. Howard Chu posted kind of a synopsis of chain analysis and what happened with. So there were 2 contracts with Integra and chain analysis.
Yeah,
it was an IRS bounty, and it was sort of like Monero appeared to be their number 1 concern, like that's what they were really going after, but they also had Lightning Network and a couple other privacy coins. Those contracts were both awarded and paid in full, but we can't really be sure what the results were. We don't know if it was Lightning Network based or if they developed some strategy to get Monero. However, all of the other coins that they've been able to track and surveil and develop means to expose the chain, they have offered subscriptions for, and they have not offered a subscription for Monero, at least not Integra and not chain analysis. So it doesn't look like they really got anywhere with that, at least in terms of Monero.
Arctic Mind talks about this kind of ties into the regulation thing too, right? So like where a lot of this regulation is potentially stemming from are these chain analytics companies that want governments to implement more KYC, AML, things of that nature, so that they can then offer their services and offer tools for these companies so they can follow the regulations. And like you said, with Monero, there's no tool for them to offer. Unless there's some scenario in wherein they've figured out how to trace Monero, but they're not offering a tool, or I guess they're doing it covertly to the government would have to be the argument that's being made there, right?
Yeah, it's a convenient argument because you don't have to provide any proof of it. You can just say, well, again, the government's omnipotent; they can do whatever, and they have all the technology to beat all the encryption, and it's just a honeypot. And it's like, well, okay, but I see no evidence of that. Like I can't. I don't even see anything that I can like base a speculation, to run with. And I love doing that. I love taking little bits of information, trying to synthesize them, speculating on what it could mean, and then maybe trying to come to some kind of very tentative conclusion. But I don't see any of that for Monero. I see like literally no evidence except for who was the guys last year that they said that they could.
CipherTrace or something, right?
Yeah, CipherTrace. They're the only ones that have like offered any kind of subscription model for Monero, and I'm sure that like they can do some things in some edge cases. They probably poison output attacks, stuff like that. All the things that were documented in breaking Monero. So, but I don't, other than like statistical, probably like some minor statistical abilities to sometimes see that maybe this output has a higher probability of being associated with some nefarious activity, et cetera. In terms of like being able to expose the transaction graph and defeat the broad privacy of Monero, I don't see anything that looks compelling in terms of evidence, even speculatively.
Yeah. I agree. We'll see what happens in 2023. I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but based on what we know from the open source I mean, the thing is that the people that would know how to do these things are the people that are building Monero, right? And like working on Monero is open source. So, if those people are looking at this tech and saying it can't be traced, then why would there be this other, group of humans that have somehow figured out how to trace it? Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. So yeah. I think once we know it's traceable, that we ourselves will know it's traceable. I don't think there'd be any great advantage that anybody can have over anybody else.
One thing that we saw with Lightning Network is we saw these research papers come out, or at least a few of them come out, that describe the mechanisms by which you might be able to trace Lightning Network. Right. For example, in 2020, we saw a paper by Renee Pickhardt, which is one of like the top Lightning devs, and other Lightning devs. They released this paper and said, hey, you could probably, or we were able to view channel balances in near real time. And then a year later, we saw Lightning Network get added to the subscription service on Chainalysis. So it's like, we haven't seen that with Monero. Like, where are the research papers showing that Monero is susceptible to direct kinds of attacks like that? They just don't exist. So, it's like you said, we should see in the academic world, we should see the evidence of this somewhere, and it's just not there.
All right, man. We're rounding at an hour. This is how long a Monero talk typically goes. I think we covered a lot. Anything on your list that should be mentioned that we didn't throw out there yet?
No, I don't think so. Let me take one more look here. But I wrote down John Oliver. John Oliver did some kind of comedy piece about Monero.
That was this year? It's all.
I think it was this year. Pretty sure it was.
All a blur. Right, that's where he criticized Monero, and he made some analogy with buying bathtubs, right? Human-sized bathtubs.
Human-shaped acid-resistant plastic tubs.
Oh, that was a pretty classic moment. That was this year? Wow, time flies.
It was good. I laughed. I'm not going to lie.
It was very good.
I'm pretty sure it was this year.
Hey, man, half the battle, or more than half the battle, is people just knowing that Monero exists. That's really what it's all about. That's how you build up network effect, right? People, the brand, it's like Coca-Cola. Everybody in the world knows it. Bitcoin obviously has done an amazing job at that. But if people are talking about Monero, for better or worse, it's all good. All publicity, in my mind, is good when it comes to spreading crypto like Monero. Yeah, so let's round it out then, maybe with some predictions. Whatever. If you don't want to play the game, we don't have to. But I feel like you might do a pretty good job of this, predicting like price. What's your 2023 price prediction? Like the top price we could see in 2023, or do you not see it as a year in which we'll see any new new gains?
2023 Monero tops. Monero could double top, maybe like 350, somewhere in the 350 to 450 range. Monero will go on a nice big fat run this year. Bitcoin probably won't do quite so well. If we made 50,000, I'd be shocked. Maybe we could make like 40,000, 35,000. I do predict that we will have some big extended bull run. Probably the stock market will look like it won't make new highs, but again, it'll get within shooting distance. People will think we're close. Towards the end of the year, my prediction is that the realization that the Federal Reserve cannot lower rates and they can't start expanding monetary policy again until inflation gets back down to their 2-3% target, that's when the markets are going to realize, oh crap, maybe we're still overvalued and we're going to come right back down to these same lows. My prediction is that Monero won't be back down here. This is the last time to buy Monero in the low $100 range. But most of these other coins, yeah, and the stock markets are going to come back down to these lows, and that will be the real test. I don't think I could have any like reliable prediction beyond that, because we have to stop and wait and see what does the Federal Reserve say, what are the economic numbers looking like. But that's my general feel for how this year should play out in a price sense.
And so that the broader market will have another downturn, but Monero would kind of won't hit a new low, is what you're saying, right?
It'll downturn, but it won't be nearly as severe as the rest of the markets.
And even with Monero, even versus Bitcoin, you think?
I think that Monero will very likely hit the 0.1 area, the 0.01, which is 1% of Bitcoin's value. Mm-hmm. We will ultimately break to the upside. This should be the year that we actually do see consistent long-term bull market gains against Bitcoin. That chart's very likely going to keep on going.
All right, man. When we hit that 0.01, we got to jump on a live Monerotopia at that point. Would you be down?
Hell yeah.
All right. So price, yeah. So any prediction in terms of transaction count? I mean, do you think we see new all-time highs in transaction count this year?
Yeah. What's our highest point? 60,000. That was crazy.
I
think we had 60. Maybe we don't hit an all-time high transaction count. Maybe we do, but I do predict steady progressive improvement. We should have more transactions in 2023 than we had in 2022. I do believe that.
Awesome.
But that's easy, that's not so hard of a prediction to make.
Yeah. All right, yeah, let's leave it at that. We could jump into the chat. Any other info you want to put out there? I know, most people already know you now from you're coming to Monerotopias all the time. I wanted you to do a proper Monero talk. Although I do feel like we still never did the Bawdy interview. We could do that another time in the future, where I just kind of get more of your story. This is focused on if you want to, no pressure.
No, that'd be great.
But yeah, greatly appreciate it, man. Thanks for all the info. And yeah, anything you want to get out there before we jump into the spaces? We could do some Q&A.
I just wanted to say thanks to all the Monero participants on Reddit and the Monero sub. Looking through all the top posts of this last year is kind of how I put together this list. And collectively, the community does a great job at capturing all the important stuff. So I just want to say thanks to everyone on both Reddit and Twitter in the Monero arena.
Awesome, man. All right, guys, anybody listening in Monero Spaces, we're going to go ahead and jump over there. Bawdy, thank you so much.
See you on Twitter.
Yep. Guys, anybody want to jump up? Ask Bawdy a question. All right, we got Gabe requesting. Hold on a sec. Gabe, what's up?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Awesome. Okay. I guess my question, just going back, to mid part of the interview, who would the feds go after if it went to courts? Like, they go guys after like you or Jeff Berwick or Justin and Devs? Because it's decentralized, so I don't know who they would target.
When you say go after, what do you mean? Like try to hold accountable for Monero?
Yeah, like just when you guys were talking about how, I guess, what's going on with Tornado Cash, support them and whatnot, which I agree. But if, what Elizabeth Warren's been saying, and then if they directly put privacy coins in the crosshairs of the law and the state apparatus. I don't know who they would kind of go after. Just I don't see who their prime target would be.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's one of the things Monero does well. So some of the, those that do the most work on Monero stay private, right? They don't reveal their identity. But there are those whose identities have been revealed. And I guess in a worst case scenario, they would be told that they can't work on the Monero project, the devs, to go after the devs potentially. This is in some worst case scenario we're talking about, where if they actually tried to effectively ban Monero, I guess they'd go after the wallet providers, telling them that they can no longer provide their service, things like that.
It would almost seem like, going after the Hydra, right? You cut off one head. I feel like our community would just, sprout back in different forms, different ways, and we'd be a resilient bunch that, just due to the way we are decentralized, that I feel like it would be pretty hard for them to nail any one person down and say, yeah, we got it. And I mean, I always think of, you think of, just say, the drug market, like heroin and cocaine, they're illegal and it's a thriving business, seems to be.
Yeah, I mean, Monero, I would say arguably more than any other crypto, would be very difficult to effectively shut down. People could still access the code, download it, run a full client, and they're participating in the network. Miners can mine on their CPUs, and people can send transactions. And then, the devs can continue to work anonymously behind the scenes to upgrade the protocol. All right, we got Bawdy in here. Hold on, let me make him a.
Hey, sorry about that.
Speaker. Yep, no worries.
Sorry, Bawdy, did you catch any of my questions there about who the feds would go after within the Monero community?
I didn't, but is that I heard you say Jeff Berwick.
Well, I was just throwing out names. Like, I was just like, if they decided to go after someone, who do they go after? I mean, the devs? Do they go after Jeff Berwick? Do they?
Well, I guess
like, there's no one.
They'd probably start by trying to go after U.S. citizens. The slaves, the easiest slaves to reach. But I just don't see how they could possibly do that. I don't see how any of that would hold up. I don't know. I mean, if that happened, I would definitely be donating to a legal fund to try and defend whoever they attacked. And although, again, it would be annoying and problematic for some period of time, after they lose, it would be over for them. They'd have no more chance of going after Monero after that.
Which, just thinking out loud, would that kind of the reason why they're not directly going after it, why they're using these kind of backdoors to attack it, because they would know basically any publicity is good publicity and it would kind of blow up in their face? Would that be kind of a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so. That seems to be what they're doing. I've even been surprised at how much they've covered Monero. Like, for example, Bloomberg and Vice picked up the Monerun, and they published a couple articles on that. And we've seen a few other times where, like, on live or national television, they'll talk about Monero. It hasn't been often, but I'm just surprised that they did it at all.
Yeah, I know. Like, I did my best to promote it because like I'm calling from Canada here in Alberta, and I tried my best to promote it during the truckers rally. I had my Monero flag out. Our local media, I kind of walked by them. Well, there was some of us, but I was trying to walk back and forth when I saw the media giving coverage with my Monero flag. I had my Guy Fawkes mask on and whatnot, but I don't think anything got. I never saw any footage of myself with my Monero flag, but I was flying the colors.
I feel like I saw a picture of the Canadian trucker protest, and there was a Monero flag flying around there. That must have been you.
Maybe.
Doing the Lord's work, sir.
Exactly. Doug, one thing I wanted to talk to you about. I got onto the board of my local elected official. I don't know how it would translate down there in the States. That'd be our congressman or the equivalent of that. But anyways, I'd kind of like to, one of the reasons I did is I have the ability to draft policy and have it submitted within our party to get it basically reviewed and approved. And maybe at some later time, I'd kind of like to pick your brain on what I could write in policy from someone that is a supporter of Monero.
Oh wow, yeah. Let's definitely talk about that. On what level you're saying? On the federal level in Canada?
No, it would be our provincial level, so your guys' state level, and he's represents our city within our province, our elected official, and he's very freedom-minded. But I don't know. I've had a couple chats with him, but I don't get the vibe that he's very well versed on crypto at all. But I know, just talking from other people, now that I've been on the board, they said, now's a chance, draft some policy, bring it to before the board, and see what happens.
Yeah, I would love to brainstorm with you on that for sure. 100%.
What kind of ideas did you have going just right out the gate?
Well, it's kind of why I wanted to, I don't want to hijack the whole chat, but just rough ideas to promote mining within the community or in our province, specifically Monero, since everyone can do it. There's in one of our other provinces, Quebec, that provincial government seems to be favorable to Bitcoin mining. So I don't see why our province, Alberta, which is kind of the Texas of Canada, why we can't do the same that other provinces are doing it. I've also brainstormed with a couple of my buddies about just going to our local chamber of commerce and trying to introduce, Monero as payment to local businesses in and around the community. But right now it's just kind of ideas, just talk.
So thinking out loud, you might start with things that are easy to get on board with. Start by kind of maybe reaffirming some of the core values, like, for example, people's right to use encryption on their computing devices, the right of people to create peer-based messaging networks, and then perhaps maybe even work your way towards recognizing officially that cryptocurrencies created as encrypted peer-based networks are fundamentally an expression of speech before, ahead of any other kind of, designation as money or anything else, that fundamentally at heart, they are first and foremost messaging networks, publication, cryptography, and that kind of lays the sort of legal groundwork for how it's treated in other forums. Maybe, I'm not saying that's what we should do. I'm just saying that's an idea of something you might be able to do.
Yeah, and basically, at some point, I'd like to lay out a case on why we should do this and promote it. Right now, our province is probably the most hated province in Canada because the equivalent of our governor is very pro-freedom, pro-liberty. She's come out and said she is a libertarian, and because of that, she's taking a stand on personal freedoms and liberty, and the rest of the country hates her. So I feel right now would be the best time to kind of present these ideas, talk about them more, and actually get them taken seriously.
I guess to get the local government to accept Monero for certain types of payments could be something to look into as well.
Yeah, that would be awesome if that could happen. But that'd be something I could definitely put into a draft version of policy that I could present before the board.
Yeah, maybe there'd be some arguments as to why people, deserve the right to pay with something like Monero that preserves their financial privacy.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And then obviously, like you said, things to help promote the adoption of Monero by businesses, right? So I assume where you are, right, there's nothing stopping anybody from just accepting Monero, right, in a store or a business, right, in terms of legalities, right?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, I think it would just be, the easiest way for them to do it. Like I feel when I've onboarded people one-to-one, Cake Wallet seems to be the most user-friendly for them all, and they seem to like it. So I don't know if that's something a business could actually, if they said, okay, we're going to accept, payment for, I don't know, dozen eggs, let's say, they can easily pay it at the till with a Cake Wallet installed in their till or the owner's phone. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
If you wanted to go for irony, you could draft a resolution to pay your taxes in Monero.
Yeah, that's what I was
notwithstanding.
Why not? Anybody else want to ask a question, jump up, say anything? Especially if it's related to what we were talking about. Anybody got a question for Bawdy, a prediction for 2023? Anything in 2022 that happened that we didn't discuss? Any major Monero news? Now's the time. Gabe, what do you think about Monero in 2022 and where we're headed in 2023? You have any overall thoughts, predictions?
Well, I'm biased, but I figure that I tell this to everyone is the price will probably continue to go up as long as our governments continue to clamp down and pass more draconian policies. I think there's a definite price relationship between that. So, but I'm going to keep using it, spending it, getting it, regardless of price. Because I have discussions with other people and disagreements, and they tell me, well, go to this coin, I made 10x, and it's like, yeah, but what's the point of 10xing if you can't spend your money in the future? You're locked out of it for based on some ESG policy. It prevents you from purchasing that extra tank of gas that you need for the month or something like that, right?
One story we tangentially missed was very recent. I think as of today or yesterday, Kraken announced that they're not going to be operating in Japan anymore, which is interesting. I guess they said they didn't have enough interest or usage or something like that. But yeah, they're going to be reversing or giving back their operator's license in Japan.
Interesting. Obviously Monero wasn't listed there in Japan, right?
Yeah, so not too related to Monero, but we all like Kraken at least more than any of the other ones.
For sure.
I saw that Nigeria did a 180 on their cryptocurrency laws. It seems like it, anyways.
What were their previous laws?
I believe they tried to ban the use of cryptocurrencies, and they implemented a limit, or they lowered the limit of cash you can withdraw from your accounts. And then today I heard from a coworker of mine that is from Nigeria, and he said now that it's going to go wide open. I haven't looked into that and to see if everything was telling me was accurate, but he seemed pretty excited.
That was probably mostly Charles Hoskinson's, with all of his outreach efforts in Africa that we heard so much about from him.
Would love to do an interview with him.
Any response? I remember you were reaching out to him a little bit.
No, he hasn't responded. I see some new accounts, faces, a lot that I've never seen in the Monero room. If any of you guys want to jump up, ask a question about Monero?
Make some crazy, outlandish prediction for next year. Come on.
Yeah, anything you got. I put monerotopia.com link in the bird's nest, so anybody that is listening that's kind of new to this community, we're doing a Monero conference down in Mexico City in May, so if you want to check that out. Otherwise, I'll close it out here, I think, if nobody else has got anything new to say. I think it's just us.
I guess just one more question. Can you explain what Seraphis is going to be able to do?
Yeah, so it's the main thing that everyone's focused on is the ability to add more decoys or increase the ring size. Right now, as you increase the ring size, you get this like 1-for-1 increase in the block size, whereas Seraphis enables you to increase the ring size, but it's only just marginally more block size to do so. It behaves as a logarithmic function, so that it like let's suppose you wanted to add 128 ring members, it would only cost some fraction of that to be able to add that many ring members. So essentially, that's kind of the weakest part of Monero's cryptography obfuscation, is the fact that we're limited in how many people can be included in a ring. From a purely theoretical standpoint, if you could do something like Backlash does, where you take from the entire shielded pool, it could be anyone in that pool, that's really the ideal. But unfortunately, ZK snarks aren't necessarily the easiest to implement. It requires a trusted setup. There's a bunch of trade-offs there. So increasing the ring size is kind of one of the major pieces that would make Monero significantly more future-proof. So that's what Seraphis is supposed to do. It also makes multi-sig much easier. It requires a new addressing format to do so. And then there's a few other benefits that go along with that. It might be the case that if we get very large Monero adoption, we might not be able to go to 128 ring size. We might have to settle for something like 64 or maybe like 32 or 40 or something like that, simply because the verification times take a significant amount of CPU. And you don't want a chain that's so large that you need like a 96 core processor just to catch up to the chain. So there's kind of trade-offs in that realm. Personally, I tend to think that like, if you're not already running a Monero node, let's suppose between now, starting in the next 5 or 10 years, okay, you might really have to throw some big resources to catch up to the chain. But that's not really such a big deal either, right? I don't see that as being a big problem. Because most people that are going to run nodes are already running nodes. If you really, really need to run your own node that's not pruned, for example, not a pruned node, you can spend the money to use those resources if you really need to do that. But moreover, you can do things like checkpointing the chain, which we already do, but you could expand that theoretically to checkpointing the chain in a different kind of way, where you basically just download the chain up to a certain block, and then you can perform a hash of that block, or like some of the developers can sign that entire download, much the same way that you would verify like the Monero wallet when you download it. And this is just kind of my ramblings. Probably some developer will tell me why I'm wrong, and they will probably be right. But it's there are ideas, there are ways of getting around this. But anyways, overall, Seraphis is just increasing. It helps us to increase the ring sizes without massively expanding the sizes of blocks. And it has a bunch of other cool stuff in there as well that I don't know. I'm not as familiar with it as I'd like to be, but that's the short version.
I think the other thing to note is that it's effectively is going to be more modular, so it may make upgrading easier in the future in terms of upgrading, how we obfuscate the sender, perhaps replacing ring signatures completely in the future.
And any idea when it will be rolled out, roughly?
We're still looking at easily 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years in the future. They're still speccing it out, basically, and doing the preliminary tests.
Okay, that's awesome. Anyways, guys, I'm going to get going. I'm just heading to a jiu-jitsu class, so chat with you guys later.
All right, Gabe, thanks so much. Yeah, we're going to close it out here. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening in. We, in fact, pretty much do a Monero Talk show every week, and then we do a Monerotopia show on the weekends, and we now stream them both on Twitter. So hope to see you guys in the future in 2023. Bawdy, thanks so much, man. Greatly appreciate all the insights, as always.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate you having me on Monerotopia.
All right. Cheers. Later.
Bye, guys.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode. We release new episodes every week. You can find and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Odyssey, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Go to monerotalk.live to subscribe for a full list of places where you can watch and listen. If you want to interact with us, guests, or other podcast listeners, you can follow us on Twitter. And please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps people find the show, and we are always happy to read them. So thanks so much, and we look forward to being back next week.